Hello and welcome back to Zirkzank Says. This is episode 160. I don't know why in the previous episodes I was not saying this before, the episode title and the number, because for a very long time I did not know what episode it was be until afterwards. But then, even if I did, I was thinking it doesn't really matter if it's 160 or 180. It doesn't make a difference, because it doesn't matter. But now I started to realize I might as well say it, because then I can talk about the fact that I've made a lot of episodes, a lot of videos. What I'm trying to do, essentially, I said this to somebody, was make a channel where it has thousands of videos, so somebody could stumble across it and be like, holy shit, holy shit, like the Quake announcer. But what they will see is they'll see like, fuck, this guy has made 3,000 videos and they only get 2 views each. That in its own is like impressive, especially if each video is like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, like 40, 50 minutes long, or an hour long each video that nobody's watched. So there's like 3,000 hours worth of videos there that has been made by somebody but not watched. I always thought the idea of that just seemed cool to me, to just have that much content out there on the internet that no one experienced. So that's kind of my goal at the moment, and it's nice to have a goal, and it's nice to feel like you're progressing towards the goal. Like, I'll talk about that in a second. Actually, what I wanted to clarify was something I was saying in the previous episode, which was like, for example, when someone says something to you that's like a compliment, or the mindset approaching where you are in life, the mindset surrounding where you are in life. For example, I'll bring it up as an example then. If someone says to you, hey, you're cool, and they mean it sincerely, you can tell by the context of the situation that it was a sincere compliment. It's like, oh man, yeah, I do, I think you're really cool. Like, I can't really act it that well, actually. Something like a scenario where it's like, yeah, I think you're cool, and they mean it, or hey, you're really cool, and they mean it. I'm gonna stop trying to act, because it's 2 a.m. and for me, the best time I usually have with voices and acting and stuff is usually like straight after waking up, after having lots of sleep and having a coffee. So when I'm like full energy, I can do it properly. But right now I can't. How is that relevant to what I was saying before? Okay, someone says you're cool. There are 2 things you can think and say in response to that. There are more than 2, but the 2 avenues that I have, well, the first one I always by default would go to. It's like just thinking like, I'm not cool, or like maybe they think I'm cool, but they don't know like a bunch of facts about me, and then you start thinking yourself like, yeah, that might be true, but I could be cooler. So for example, if someone said I'm cool, and when people have said I'm cool, which is surprising, like people who don't know any of my history or my backstory or my character development arc will think that I'm cool now, and maybe I am cool now, but I definitely wasn't in the past. So when someone says to me, hey, you're cool, all I'm thinking in the back of my head is my past, and I'm thinking, oh, you definitely shouldn't say that. I'm not fucking cool at all. I'm a fucking like autistic virgin nerd. I'm not cool. That's what I'm thinking in the back of my head, but then it's like, actually, that's not true. I am pretty cool. So then you get to a point where it's like, oh, when someone says you're cool, you need to just, oh, cheers, man. Or, thanks, I'm glad you think so. Or, yeah, I appreciate that. I think you're cool too, if you think that they're cool too. It's always good to be honest and genuine. But yeah, not to just think to yourself that their compliment is wrong. And a lot of the times in those situations, if someone says to me, I'm cool, that they think I'm cool, what I think to myself is like, well, I'm unemployed, and I don't like that I'm unemployed. I don't think it's very cool to be unemployed. So it makes me think, no, I'm not that cool. I'm unemployed. And then I start to think of other things that I don't like about myself that make me less cool. So for example, the fact that I have not yet got around to doing a driving test. Like, I have my driver's license, I don't have a car. So I think I would definitely feel cooler if I had a car. And the same thing with like living at home. For example, living at my mum's house. It's the house that my mum pays. It's like the house is in my mum's name, but I pay a lot towards the rent to live here. So it's not like I'm freeloading on my mum or anything like that. But it is still living with your fucking mum. So it's kind of like being a basement dweller still, which once again makes me think I'm not that cool. I don't have a job, don't have a car, and I live with my mum. You list those three things out and you don't associate them with cool. But in the scenario where, for example, you're hanging out talking to somebody in a club, be it male or female, especially if it is female though, it's like you don't want to be thinking of all the ways you're not cool when a female or a grill or basically when somebody that you have any attraction towards and is saying to you something that they like about you, something that's positive, you don't want to be thinking negatively in that scenario. So it's a really bad mindset to have, which is why I was saying in the previous video that getting over that and just being like, I might not be in the situation that I would like to be in, but I am still in a really good fucking situation, so like, thank you for thinking that I'm cool. I definitely am. Or if you can't really take a compliment that well, I guess just be like, just laugh and be like, oh, maybe, or yeah, I am, or turn it into a joke. That's what I always do. If someone says something to me that I think is fucking awkward, which is like anything anyone says ever, because people in general are just fucking awkward. I hate human beings. Sorry, just take that back, because you're a human being if you're watching this, probably, unless you're an AI, but I mean, like, if you're a human being, and I just offended you, I fucking do deeply apologize for that. I do not want to offend any fucking human beings by saying that I hate human beings, because human beings are not that bad. I mean, sorry, that also sounds negative. I love humans, they're great. Being a human as well, fucking ace. No, I'd rather be an AI, or a snail or some shit like that. That would be cool. Or a moth. But yeah, I don't know. Being cool, going with coolness, just for a start, being like, yeah, don't focus on the negative, just focus on the positive. Don't focus on the past, where you think I wasn't cool in the past. And don't focus on the future, where you think, well, I'm going to be cooler in the future. You focus on the present. And that's kind of what a huge part of Eastern philosophy is, living in the moment and living in the present. Obviously, you're supposed to plan for the future and be mindful of the future, but be mindful in a way that's beneficial. So thinking of the future and the past in a way that makes you feel less confident, that's not beneficial. In those kind of situations, living in the present and forgetting about the future and the past really does benefit you. So that's something to bear in mind. A long time ago, I really was quite attuned to Eastern philosophy. That was like, I'd say, after recovering from heavy depression in like 2012 or so, I bounced back with the help of Eastern philosophy, and it really helped. And then I sort of just recovered back into life and started enjoying life again. And then I forgot about it. I sort of embodied it in a way while it was useful for me to embody it, and then I just abandoned it. And then I started going for more like traditional Western philosophy, and that just made me hate myself a lot, because Western philosophy is a lot more judgmental, and there's a lot more emphasis on self-improvement, whereas Eastern philosophy is, I don't want to say, I am kind of misrepresenting this a little bit, but there's a shitty version of Eastern philosophy that kind of says, be yourself. It doesn't say don't try to improve, it just says try to be happy in who you are. Whereas Western philosophy kind of says almost constantly, you're shit and you need to sort yourself out, you need to improve yourself, your room can always be cleaned more. Your life can always be made to be better. And it puts a lot of pressure on you. It gives you a lot of purpose and meaning because it gives you something to do, which is to constantly strive to be above the judgment that you're giving yourself. Whereas Eastern philosophy is kind of just like, you are the way you are, things are the way they are. What is, live in the moment, and everything is just matter, and the universe is going to die at some point. It is quite nihilistic, but it's also quite freeing. So it's appealing in the sense that it allows you to relax, and the relaxation allows you to focus on enjoyment a lot. That's what I'm trying to get at. Whereas with Western philosophy, you don't really get that much enjoyment out of it. You get to feel fulfillment, which for a lot of people is better. So instead of striving for happiness, and instead of striving for indulgence, you're striving for purpose and justifying the suffering of your existence in a way that it's like, yeah, I might not be happy, but what I'm doing is good. So you feel a sense of pride in the fact that you're doing something good. Whereas in other philosophies, like, yeah, you don't need to be prideful about doing something that's like objectively useful or subjectively worthwhile to you. You just need to do whatever, and it doesn't matter what you do. As long as what you're looking for is peace, you'll find that by just letting go. So these are two really conflicting ideas that I have looked into a lot and tried to embody in my life. And obviously, as you can tell, the Western one just really stressed me out a lot. I just don't think it's appropriate for me until I maybe reevaluate it somehow. The core principle always that I will agree with and definitely say that this is true as fuck as far as Western philosophy goes, which is that if you're heading in the right direction towards a goal that you have in mind, heading in the direction of that will always feel good. And the point of is not to get to somewhere, it's to feel good about the journey towards the destination. Now this is something that both Eastern and Western philosophy kind of talk, that is kind of right. It's like, it's more about enjoy the journey. Our life is about the journey, not the destination, sort of thing. But from two different perspectives. One of them is kind of from the perspective of living in the moment is important, whereas the other one, the Eastern one, the Western one is kind of more like, if things are going good for you, that will feel right, rather than if things are good for you. So if things are good for you, you don't notice. But if things are going well for you, or they're heading in a positive direction, that feels better. So making progress from like a shitty point in life feels just as good as making progress from a really high point in life. And similarly, going down in progress. So if you're a millionaire, but you're losing money, it's like, hey, you're still a fucking millionaire. If you have $1 billion and you start losing like $1 million, you start losing millions, you still have $1 billion, but it's gonna piss you off, and you're gonna feel like shit. It's all genuinely really relative to your position. You're not gonna constantly think, even though I'm losing money, I'm still in such a good position because I have millions. You're thinking, no, this sucks. Why do I have to be losing millions? Doesn't matter, you've got billions. But see what I mean? It's not about where you are, it's about where you're heading. So like when you get a call for me, for example, it feels really good when I get a call. I'm like, hey, I saw your CV, you just applied for this job. I would like to invite you to come for an interview. And it's like, oh, it starts to feel good because you're heading in the right direction. Where I am hasn't changed, or it's like I don't have the job. I don't get the job by them asking me to come in for an interview. I am still literally just sat in the same position, but it feels like your life's heading in the right direction that you want it to, so it's good. So like a good day would be, You get a phone call from somebody inviting you for a job interview. That's useful because what I want is a job. And being in the right direction to getting a job feels good. On the other hand, though, getting rejected from an interview, or saying an interview, failing an interview, feels bad because it puts you in the opposite direction. Unless you can say, oh, well, I learned from the interview, in which case you can trick your brain into thinking that it was still a positive, and most of the time it kind of was for job interviews. I don't think that I've ever been out of an interview and it's like, that was shit, and I didn't learn anything from it, because you always do. Similarly, if like you get I don't know. If you get cancer, that's great. No, I forgot what I was going to say. Don't have to say anything. Don't even have to remember anything. But yeah, I think I've more thoroughly explained what I was trying to say before from the previous episode, which was about letting go. Except it wasn't really about letting go. It was about just changing the way you look at things. Or for me, personally, changing the way I look at things to feel better about life. You could argue whether you deserve to feel better about yourself. That's a different issue. And like I said, with the Western viewpoint of judgment, it's like, hey, if you're not living up to your maximum potential, you feel guilty about it. So accepting yourself for who you are is kind of like cheating, because you shouldn't be able to, you don't deserve to feel happy about yourself because you suck. It's kind of what Western philosophy says. Yeah, if you do something great, yeah, you do deserve to be able to say, hey, well, I did that and that was pretty good. So that builds up your confidence a bit, I guess. But still, it doesn't feel good constantly judging yourself. So I think rather than doing that, I'm just going to go back to this sort of like, fuck it. You know, it's easier to just the fuck it approach rather than the focus hard and work on improving yourself, because that'll feel justified and worthwhile. It's like, like genuinely pisses me off trying to do stuff I don't want to do. And sometimes I know you can't. Obviously, there are plenty of things you have to do, and there are plenty of things I have to do and I will do that I don't want to do. But forcing myself to do things, for example, like saying, hey, well, I would like to write a book. So then you have to force yourself to open up a document and write words into the document. And if you don't want to do that because you don't feel like doing it, it's arguable whether it's even worth doing that or not. It's worth doing it if you do write the book, and while you're writing it, you feel like, wow, I'm making progress. This is great. But if you're writing it and you're thinking, like, if you're getting bitter about it, and you're like saying, like, oh, right now I could be playing games, or I don't really want to be doing this. This is fucking boring. This is not what I want to be doing. But I'm going to force myself to do it because eventually I'll feel better. It's like, you're just making yourself miserable for nothing. And so I was making myself more miserable than I needed to. So it's like, why would you do that? Why would you make yourself more miserable than you need to by constantly judging yourself? You shouldn't. It's fucking retarded. So I decided, hey, I'm just going to stop being retarded. As dumb as I've become by not learning, not using my brain, like, it's been like fucking since 2009 is when I was in school. So I haven't really learned anything since 2009. It's 2018 right now. So let's just pretend I've been out of education for 9 years. I know I was at university, and people would say that that's like an educational place, but it really fucking wasn't. I did not learn anything in university. I learned social skills in university, and not even as many as I wanted to, because I was on a course with all guys, so I didn't learn any like hot tips for pulling chicks and babes or anything like that. I just learned that, hey, everyone on my course was autistic and liked video games, and they were all guys. So it's like, yeah, the past 9 years I've not been in any kind of actual education. I genuinely wish that I could have just stayed in school forever and up to this point, because using your brain and keeping it fresh, keeping the cogs turning, as they say, or they shouldn't because there are no cogs in your brain, but you know what I'm saying, like, keeping the brain ticking was useful. And now I'm not. Now, even as retarded as I am already, I need to try and be less retarded by doing stupid things like making my own life miserable through pointless judgment. So yeah, that's the long roundabout way of saying I'm going to do whatever I want. And as if I have to try and justify it, but I do, because if I don't justify it, I'll go back to feeling guilty about it. Yeah, it's really fucking hard, because it's like no matter what you do, you can't really escape the guilt. You can make up really good excuses, but at the end of the day, you know they're just excuses, unless you actually believe them. And you can't really tell what you believe unless you act it out, and unless you say something and you feel like, yeah, what I've just said resonates with my conscience, and it's like, did what I just say really resonate? Did I actually feel it's true? Well, it's what I act out, so it must be what I believe. I act out the lifestyle that nothing matters. It's like, I feel bad about it, but if it's what I act out, it's what I believe, so I shouldn't feel bad about what I believe. It's not really doing anyone any harm. It may be doing the opposite of that. It might be the saying like, well, you may not be directly harming anyone, but you're indirectly being less useful than you could be, so you should feel bad about that. But I say, I don't want to care about that, because it just makes life not as enjoyable as it could be. And you say, well, it's back to the scenario where you started. So, once again, I tried judging myself and improving based on that fear of like, if I don't get my act together, my life's going to be pretty shit. But it's like, it's not. I could never motivate myself through fear of a shit future, because I figured no matter what happens, I am still going to have a pretty good life. Like, even if I get like lung cancer, or even if I die, I'll still have a good life. And even if I don't clean my room, and even if I don't do certain things that I know I should do, I'll still have a good life. So it's like, there is no motivation of fear to get me to rethink what I'm doing and to switch around. There's literally no reason why I shouldn't be lazy, because being lazy isn't making my life any worse. It's making it be not as good or as useful as it could be. It's like, it could be a lot more than it is, but I am fine with it where it is. Like, there are certain areas and certain things that I want still, and certain things I'd like to do, but in general, I don't need to improve as much as I think I do. Like, for example, I don't need to be writing a book, so why should I feel bad for not writing a book? So that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I shouldn't feel bad for not making YouTube videos, because I don't need to be making them. I shouldn't feel bad for not learning to play the guitar that I bought, because I don't really need to. Like, my life in 5 years won't be hellish just because I didn't learn the guitar. My life in 10 years won't be that much worse just because I didn't learn to play the guitar. And the same applies to all a bunch of other things that I'm making myself feel bad for. It's like, there's just no point, like, feeling like shit about those kind of things, because they don't fucking matter. There is stuff that does kind of matter, unless you're gonna say nothing matters. But then again, that's a completely different argument. All I'm saying is to just stop, to be less self-judgmental rather than more self-judgmental, because it's not enough good motivation. Like, the fear motivation isn't working, because there's no fear of anything going wrong, even if I do keep doing things the way I do. It's like, even if I do keep going out drinking every weekend, my life in 5 years isn't going to be isn't going to be too shit. Probably. It's like, it could be better. Or I could be more productive if instead of going out drinking, I did write a book. Or did learn to program. Or did learn to play guitar. So like I say, there's tons of things that I could be doing that I'm not doing. But then I start feeling bad for not doing them. Which is a really bad thing. Because it just makes you think like, well, could be going to the gym. I could be doing this. I could be doing this. I could be eating healthier. I could be doing this. And you just start to neg yourself out. That's short for giving yourself negative vibes. Don't want to neg yourself out. You want to feel positive. You want a swoon existence. That's what I'm trying to say I do. So speaking of which, going back to the original topic I was going to talk about 26 minutes ago, which was in this episode, which was getting back to Hull. That's the city of Kingston upon Hull. It is a city in the north of England, in the East Riding of Yorkshire. It is known for being the 2017 UK City of Culture. And that culture is teen pregnancy, fentanyl overdosing, and having the worst accent in the country. That's kind of subjective. I think it's the worst accent in the country that people have here. I don't have it.
But it's this one, you know, when I'm like making fun of people for saying stuff like this. Oh, when they talk like this, mate, it's fucking annoying. I just don't like how people talk in Hull.
Sorry. Yeah, it's not a great city. So it's got a heavy drinking culture and a heavy kind of like people walk around with fucking cans of beer drinking during the day all the time here. Is that if I'm selling it, like the roads are all shitty and people sound retarded, as I just tried to demonstrate with the accent. It's not a great place. It's all run down. The internet here, as I always keep talking about, and I know it's not interesting, but the internet here is behind. I'm trying to paint a picture that makes you think of how decrepit and ancient the city is. It's really far behind in terms of like culture. It has a really bad homeless problem because it has a like really bad drug problem, and obviously people who are homeless, like 90% of the time, maybe 99% of the time, people who are homeless is because of drugs. It's because they're spending all the money they get from the government on drugs. If you weren't spending all your money on drugs, you would actually be able to get help for like being homeless. You'd have like shelter access. You'd have like, if you were sensible about, like, I personally, it's like I'll never end up homeless unless I become a drug addict, because I'll always have options in terms of like going to get financial support from the social systems that are in place. So you'd have to really fuck up and be on drugs constantly, spending all your money on drugs to be homeless. So yeah, homeless problem, drug problem, drinking problem. The people here look like 10 years older than they are constantly. People don't think I'm 23. They say like, oh, you look 19. It's like, I'm not. I'm 4 years older than that. So it's very like, the word for the way I would describe the way people look is haggard. That's like the best word to describe it. It might be just the salty air from the shitty brown river that we have next to the fucking city. But yeah, obesity. I guess it has an obesity problem because it's like people eat the shitty frozen foods here, like chicken nuggets and all those like smiley faces and like really high fat, low nutrition food. So as I'm saying, it's a pretty miserable place. But the people here in general are not as miserable or as bitter about it as I am, because they make do with drugs and alcohol. Like, how could you not? You can, like, you got all the day drinking, but people socially go out night-wise and do a lot of stuff. So, like, as I'm trying to say, through that, like everyone I know or I've met in Hull goes out drinking. And because of that, I adopted to the culture where I would do it as well, as I started explaining. And it's like, when you do what other people do, you get to fit in. You bring some of your own quirks and uniqueness to it, but overall, doing mostly what other people do helps you, because it's like, people can trust you more if you're doing what they're doing, and if people trust you more, they're more likely to get along with you. And if lots of people, or if more people get along with you, you have more social bonds in the world. So, from a purely evolutionary perspective, it's better to do that. So, what I'm trying to say is, to survive in Hull, smoking and drinking has actually been beneficial, and it's actually improved my status here. So it's actually been worthwhile, if that makes a lot of sense. The other alternative way of looking at it is that Hull is so shit that the only way I've been able to cope with living here is to be constantly drunk. Which is not true, because there are plenty of... I don't need to be drunk constantly to enjoy Hull, and Hull is not that bad on its own, because it's just like any other city anywhere in the world most of the time. It's just the small things and the overall thing that bring it down a little bit in the books. Like, it could be a better city. But because of that, I ended up adding socialization. With this increased socialization, I then had a lot more exposure to the other coping mechanisms that go beyond the legal things, such as alcohol. Things extended to scenarios where people are offering me drugs, like, for example, hey, would you like this line of cocaine? And I'm just thinking, like, well, in my mind, I'm thinking, like, at some point in my life, I would like to try cocaine. So, someone offers me a line of coke, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and then I snort a line of cocaine. For example, I don't know, is it illegal to talk about experiences that you've had on drugs, doing drugs? Because I know it is illegal to do cocaine. I'm just thinking, it's not illegal if you don't own any. It's not illegal if you never bought any. It's not illegal if you don't distribute. I know you can't own drugs, you can't distribute them, and you probably can't take them. Or, I don't know. I don't know what the laws are on this, so I wouldn't want to incriminate myself in any way whatsoever. All I'm saying is, if that hypothetically happened to me in a situation where someone offered it to me and I took it, that would be a lot more likely to happen while I've been in Hull for the past few months, and like exponentially improved my life experience to the point where I would say that, based on that hypothetical situation that I told you about, I don't want to do cocaine anymore, because hypothetically when I took it, if I'd taken it, my experience of it would have been, for about 15 minutes, I would feel like I drank a lot of coffee, and then afterwards, for about a day or two, I just feel really tired. So that was cocaine. Other drugs, like tons of people constantly do weed. I don't even think that's not even interesting to talk about. It's like, you can have really interesting experiences on it, but it's such a common drug, even though it's illegal. It's like, it's weird how common it is, considering you realize, like, oh yeah, it's illegal. That's something I have noticed, though. Being surrounded by people in this city, and the fact that this city has such a problem with drugs, it's like, I actually just forget how, it's like, oh yeah, those people are doing something illegal, and you just realize maybe laws are not as up to date as they should be, I guess. I can understand why the laws exist. For example, if it was legal to do weed, and everyone who wanted to smoke weed did smoke weed, and even the people who don't want to do it, a lot of people don't do it purely because it's illegal, and a lot of people don't want to do it because it's illegal. So they don't even have the desire to do it. They don't even think, hey, if it was legal, I'd do it. Because they're so sort of set in their mind that you can't do it because it's bad. And the reason it's illegal is because it's bad for you and all of this. It's like, well, actually, if marijuana was legal, lots more people would smoke it. Like genuinely, I think a lot more people would do it, and it would make people a lot less productive. You could then rebuke that and say, like, well, in certain states in America, and like in the Netherlands, for example, there are still lots of productive people, but the general attitude of people towards life over a long period of time, I don't know if that's been tested well. The Netherlands is quite small, so it's very hard to say. But it does make you a lot less motivated of a person if you smoke weed regularly. That's what I'm trying to say. There are governmental reasons why it's illegal. Like, they don't want loads of people to smoke it constantly, because then they be less motivated and less productive workers. Also, so everyone's going to tell me, like, no, it's just because they haven't taxed it, or they can't tax it. They want to get more money out of it. It's all to do with money. It's money. It is to do with money. That's what I'm saying. Weed makes you fucking... It doesn't make you... I can't remember the quote. The point is, the quote is something like... it's not that weed makes you unable to do your job, it's that it makes you just realize how pointless it is. Something like that. So yeah, from a government perspective, if you could just say, hey, we don't want people thinking that work is pointless, we want them to think that work is useful and good, you'd kind of just say, like, hey, let's just keep weed out of it, and then let's just keep all these other drugs out, because they could come with health risks that we don't know about because they haven't been studied enough, etc., etc. Then you could then also say, like, well, why is smoking still legal? Well, once again, I don't know. I don't fucking know. Why would smoking tobacco be legal when it's clearly bad for you? When smoking marijuana is illegal, when it's clearly not as bad for you, if it is even bad at all. In moderation, obviously it's not. Then you could then argue that anything in moderation is fine. But hey, that's off topic. It's not off topic. It's what I'm thinking, like, nothing really should be illegal. Fuck it. Anarchism. That's what we need. Anarcho-capitalism. That's what we need. I don't know what we need. I think what we've managed to establish and get to right now is pretty good. So what you have to do is think, sticking to the laws that we have kind of makes things work. But would things work better or worse if the laws were different? That's kind of what government has to do. They have to do like trial and error and really, really hard thinking about the changing of legality of things. It doesn't get around the fact, though, that the drugs are illegal. A lot of it's for a reason that's actually good. A lot of it's for a reason that is, I'd say, generally bad. All in all, though, I think it's essential for people to do drugs. Like, honestly, if you've ever been curious about anything to do with what it's like to experience certain drugs, you should do them. Like, I've always been curious about what they are. So it's like, for example, in a hypothetical situation where I would get to do cocaine, like doing it, like, oh, well, hey, now I know. Although having said that, actually, I'm thinking back to myself with alcohol. Let's use alcohol as an example. Like, when I was younger, I always thought it's so stupid that I'm not even curious to do it. I don't even want to do it to see what it's like. And it was the same with smoking. It's like, it's so repulsive to me, like the passive smoking and knowing that it's that bad for you. It's so repulsive to me that I didn't even want to try it out. I get that, like, a lot of people probably have that with drugs, and it's not appropriate to then advocate drugs, because, like, in a platform like saying on YouTube, being like, hey, you should definitely do drugs, it's the opposite of what the government wants you to know or wants you to hear. So I can't really say that I'm advocating drugs. All I was saying was that having curiosities and then quelling the curiosities is an essential part of life, because that's where you develop wisdom. Honestly, anyone could tell you anything, and it might be the best advice you'd ever get, or it might be the most useful thing ever, but until you've done it yourself, it doesn't matter. Someone could say to you like, oh, when I took this drug, I felt this, I felt this, I felt this, and I thought this. It doesn't matter. You still have to do it yourself to know what it's like. Same with alcohol, same with smoking, same with fucking everything. And I say, like, certain things, it should be obvious. It's like, there's a hot stove, and someone says to you, don't put your hand on that stove because it will burn you. You got to think, like, that might be true, and you can infer what it would be like by imagining. There's no reason why you would want to test their theory, to test what they're saying, or figure out whether what they're saying is true or not. It's like, is he right? Would touching that stove really actually hurt me? You have enough of a sense to know that that's probably true. The other things that aren't like that, though, are general life advice, where people will tell you, like, I can't even think of examples, but there are billions and billions and billions of examples where somebody's going to tell you something, they're going to give you fucking golden advice, you're not going to listen to it, and then you're going to make a mistake, and then you're going to remember the advice that they gave you and say, shit, I already had the advice in mind, I already knew not to do that, but I did it anyway. That's how you fucking learn a lesson. But then not all lessons are even like that. Most of them, I think, are positive, especially like when it comes to drugs. You get curious about what a certain thing is like. It's like, I've always wanted to try doing what LSD or psilocybin mushrooms or dimethyltryptamine or ayahuasca. You're like, I've always been curious to try psychedelics, and you think, you start to hear other people talk about their experiences on it. It doesn't make you think, no, I don't want to do it. It makes you think, it doesn't make you think, hey, they've told me a load of these stories, now I don't want to try it myself. It's like, you still want to try it yourself. And I still think that you should for a lot of things. Like, even heroin. I know that's going to sound controversial, but I think you should even try heroin and meth. Just stuff that's like obviously going to fucking destroy you. You still need to do it at some point in your life, because otherwise you're just not going to know what it's like. For a lot of people, they can live without knowing, and that's fair enough. But I think a certain amount of curiosity and wanting to experience, like, the border between the known and the unknown, the border between order and chaos. You want to always be stepping foot in and out of order and chaos, and try to be as close to the center of that for as long as you possibly can. That's the optimal way to live life. That's what both Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy will teach you. And that's fucking useful to know, to always be doing new things. You don't want to stagnate yourself. But you don't want to go too far into chaos, because you can't come back. So, like, too far into chaos is dying or losing a limb, for example. Suffering unrecoverable injury from traveling into chaos, too far into chaos, is a bad thing. But so is stagnating too much in order, because you lose time, and time's irrecoverable. So it's like you are actually evolved and meant to be in the middle, constantly doing new things, whilst still having the support behind you of your old life. So, like, the comfort of knowing that things are going to be okay, while still doing things where it's risky enough that you might not be. It's like that Pizza always says, like, if you're going to fight dragons, you do it willingly, but also know that you're fighting a dragon. It could kill you. So that's the way I always see it. It's like, you have to venture into the unknown willingly. That sounds like such a cliched phrase to me now, because I've heard it so many times, but I get what it is. It's like you have to willingly put yourself in uncomfortable situations. Like, for example, when I started going out clubbing and started drinking, smoking, doing drugs, and all of these kind of things, you have to willingly put yourself into situations that could be bad for you, or that are outside of your comfort zone. Let's put it that way. Out of order, out of comfort, out of safety. Go into the danger zone. Step foot into there, into the dragon's lair, or just into a light danger zone. Like, for me, going to a club as a very introverted person who hates being around people, it's like, it's the worst place I could possibly be, because I don't get to choose the music. Music's too loud anyway. I don't get to choose the people who are around me. Don't want to really be around people that much anyway. It's like, all that's happening here is all of the shit that's, you could say, like, clubs not great, but then you just do it often enough, go to it, and then you're like, I've mastered that, or I learned a lot from that. Always do things that you're unfamiliar with. Constantly explore unexplored territory. That's something that as far as like wisdom goes, people can say that to you. You won't take it seriously until you've done it enough times to realize, yeah, they're right. I need to keep doing more of that. I need to keep doing new things constantly. Obviously, there's a limit, like I said. You don't want to be doing new things to the point where you're saying like, oh, well, I've done every drug. Now I want to do the drugs that I haven't done. I want to start injecting heroin. I want to start taking fentanyl. Like, when I say I'm going to do fentanyl or heroin, I'm thinking like maybe 50, 60 years in the future. That's if I live to that long, I'm going to do heroin when I'm like dying. If you see what I mean, like, I'm going to quell that curiosity within reason. Although I know people who have actually done heroin and come out, I'd say, fine. As in, like, they have function in society. If you only do it once, it can't be that bad for you. So it's like, maybe that's like on the cards. Maybe that's next up. I don't know. Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad. Just do pizza instead. As the Turtles would say. No, cowabunga, dudes. I was going to end it there, but I want to think, is it actually worth ending there? Yeah, it is. Total power.